We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Right this minute, there are still people in line. This is great. Look at all these people here. I am so happy. I was worried that we wouldn't have enough, but the line almost done. As soon as they're in, sitting down, we'll get started. I hope you all have signed in. That's really important. That's how we make sure. Kelly's running around with the sign in if somebody needs to. That's how we make sure we have enough people for quorum. I don't think it's going to be a problem today, but that's okay.
Welcome, everybody, or welcome back in the case of those of you who came to the 9 o'clock service, or welcome for the first time for those of you that didn't come to either of the services. So let us introduce this gathering, and this is an impressive gathering, the largest number of people I've seen out for a parish meeting in several years, as it were. But let's start out with just a few notes of appreciation. Appreciation, first and foremost, for our food haulers, who those men and women who repeatedly rise to the occasion, providing us with nourishing and tasty and sustainable fare. I have yet to sample it, and I'm hoping there's some left by the time I finish. Appreciation for the extra time and effort of our elected leaders. Time that they have. The time that they have devoted to addressing problems and keeping our community on an even keel. Appreciation for the various and sundry volunteers who care enough to show up and who time and time again adjust to the unexpected. Appreciation for the generosity of our many members and friends who share First Unitarian Society's vision and are making it possible for our dreams to come true. Appreciation for our committed staff that work steadily and cheerfully and have gone the extra mile more times than I can possibly count. Appreciation for the incredible power that we are able to muster when we all pull together. Appreciation for the tradition of democratic decision-making that gives everyone a voice and keeps everyone accountable. And finally, appreciation for your very presence on this glorious June day, when you could easily, like Henry David Thoreau, have adopted some other priority for yourselves. You, my friends, are the very model of a modern Unitarian Universalist.
Do we have a slide And yet again, I have to fiddle with technology. Closer to the mic. Yep, I was just babbling to myself here as I'm fighting with the clicker. It says that it's working. Got plenty of battery. It's exciting. Oh! There we go. So, thank you, Michael, for the opening words. We're going to just do a quick agenda review. First, we'll ask you to approve the minutes, approve new members to our board and foundation. We have your opportunity to approve the annual campaign budget, and we'll have some talk about the capital campaign, where we hope that you will be approving that. And then we're going to have a little presentation by Kelly and Dorrit about the sanctuary, where we're going to ask you to consider becoming a sanctuary. And before I go any further, several people have pointed out to me that it is time to sing happy birthday to Kelly.
Wait. I have a birthday buddy in the congregation. Mr. Jim O'Brien's birthday is tomorrow.
Well, we'll sing it once for both of you. All right, and I'm not going to lead the charge here because, as I told you, I really want to thank all of you for being here. Like Michael said, it's a great day. We have people from our youngest, newest members to some of us that have been around for quite a while, and that's really good because we need to have good representative democracy. This is actually, the next task is one of my favorites, and that is asking you to approve the members that are volunteered to become members of the board. And first we'll talk about minutes, right? I gotta read the agenda, Rob. All right, so the minutes have been up there. Anybody have any changes or suggestions? Otherwise, I would take a motion to approve the minutes. Yes, Marge Schweitzer moves. And we have back there Sandy Eskridge. Yes, I'm finally learning now that my term is almost over to help the secretary by actually naming the people who make the motions. So, lesson to you, Joe. So, anybody want to have a conversation about that? Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Well, that's good. They passed. Nominees to the Board of Trustees. These are 3-year terms. We make sure that the board has people who've been on for a while. We try to move people through so that we always have some new blood and some old knowledge. And again, we have several new people here for the board. And we're going to talk about just the board members first, and then after that we'll talk about the youth board members. Chip, can you stand up? I'm not going to read everything that's up here about Chip, but I'm really ecstatic. Chip's going to be a good board member. And then we have, all right. John. Is John here? Right there. John is also stepping forward. I think they have a lot to look forward to. The board is going to be really benefit from all they have to do. I don't know, do we need a motion for this? Sure, why not? Who'd like to move? Okay, and your name? Chuck Evenson moves. Anybody want a second? David Beam seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? If you're opposed, then you're on the board. All right, good. Thank you too. I'm really thrilled that we now have new advisory members to the board. They're youth advisory members. Let's see if I can get that. Click. These are for one-year terms. We figure, you know, a young person may be too busy to do two-year terms, although they can run again if they choose to. We have Allison. Allison, you want to stand up? Right over here. Come on. You can do it. Oh, I went too fast. Come on. Gotta go back. I'm trying to go backwards. Okay, and Henry, you want to stand up back there? Henry also. Do I have a motion to approve these folks as youth board advisory members? Right here? She knows your name, so I don't have to say it out loud. And who would like to second? 3 seconds. Somebody who's, let me see. Sam. Sam Bates, yes. Any discussion? I want to say thank you to you guys for taking this up. So, all in favor say aye. Anybody opposed? And you guys are welcome to come to our Wednesday meeting, the new board members and the youth board advisory members. So that's great. I'm really thrilled. So thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. You know, it's a good thing my term is almost up because I will learn to use the microphone shortly after I'm all done as president. The announcement is that there are more bagels have arrived. If you did not get something to eat, there are more bagels out there. So run quickly and eat. Oh, I'm pushing the wrong button. I'm going backwards. Okay, now we have nominations for the foundation board. They're a really strong key part of our organization. And we have Kendall Harrison. Is Kendall here today? I don't think so. And Tad Pinkerton. Tad, I've seen you here today someplace. Tad's right over there. Do I have a move? Oh, one more? There we go. And Kurt's here too, someplace. There he is, right back there. Could I have a motion to approve these folks as foundation board members? No. Okay, I think Lorna, I know you're right there. You raised your hand first. So Lorna, and seconded was be the folks in the back there. And your name, please? Me? Yeah. Tom Garver. Tom Garver. I want to make sure that it's right in the minutes. Garver. Yes, thank you. All right. Any discussion? Hearing none. Let's put it to a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, you guys are on the foundation. Thank you very much. I guess I didn't read the slides close enough. So, back. Oh, slipped right past that. Okay, I'm so glad you guys are taking care of me, really. All right, so the board has worked with the Finance Committee and Monica to propose a budget. We had our conversation at the budget forum a couple weeks ago. The board recommends that we accept this budget, and I would take a motion if somebody would like to make a motion to accept the budget. Connie Beam, thank you. Anybody want to second it? I can't see what, and Nancy Webster, thank you. Now we can have a discussion. Anybody wish to discuss this Yes, sir, Mr. Bean. My friend Monica will tell you all about that. The question is, are there any significant changes since we had our budget forum?
Is this on? There has been no changes since the forum. That was the question, correct?
Correct.
Easy answer.
Any other discussion? I think it's an aspirational but doable budget, personally. So, no further discussion? Going once, going twice? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you all. Now we're going to have a little presentation on the capital campaign. Where's our friend Matthew? Here we go. Maybe you're going to be better at this. You're younger than I am, you know.
Okay, thanks everyone for being here today. I know over the past couple of parish meetings, I think in the winter and the spring, there have been over the past couple of parish meetings, there have been very simple overviews of the very rough framework of the idea for the proposed capital campaign that's coming together, but there hasn't been a very comprehensive overview for the congregation yet. So we're going to take a few minutes today to look at that together and then hopefully have some conversation and questions and then hopefully a motion to approve it. And before we spend our time talking about what we want to do together this coming year through the capital campaign, I thought it'd be interesting to look back and get some context. So if you can picture with me the summer of 1988, and I have a couple helpers here. That's Steve Winwood. He was dominating the Billboard charts at the time. He was known for Higher Love, if anybody can remember that. There was a truce between Iran and Iraq for the first time in 8 years after the Iranian Revolution. And if you're looking to buy something from Apple, you wouldn't need to worry about a data plan at that time. And after almost 10 years out of office, Paul Soglin was getting close to running again to be our mayor of the city of Madison. And the other significance of August of 1988 is it's when Michael first joined FUS as our senior minister. And so we can't talk about all of the exciting things that have happened in those past 30 years together right now, but we can look at an overview of some of the highlights and remember together. We've hosted the Dalai Lama. We added our third service. The Quest program started. The landmark was designated a national landmark. Kelly Crocker joined our congregation. We added the atrium that we're in now. We supported the launch of the UU James Reeb congregation on the east side. We adopted our new governance model. We've won multiple awards from the UUA. We funded our social justice position. Welcome, Tim, full-time, starting this year. And we welcomed a new congregation that uses our space also. So here we are in Michael's last year, and part of his work, as he gets ready to move on to his next adventure, is to make sure that this congregation is in as good of health as it can be, in a spiritual and in a financial sense. And so he's not going to do it alone, and we're all going to be working with him to do that. But as we spend this next year together with Michael and with one another, it's important that we sit up and pay attention and be aware of all these really treasured moments that we have together and that we've had together over the past 30 years. Part of what we hope to do with this proposed capital campaign is to be ready to face the future with resilience and really put an exclamation mark at the end of Michael's 30 years and help the next leadership team hit the ground running when they get started. In its simplest form, the capital campaign is going to include some investment in our 2 signature buildings, the Landmark and the Atrium. And so I'll just take a minute or two to talk about some of the highlights for each of those. And before I do that, I can let you know where we've come so far and what work has already gone into the campaign. Michael created and circulated a case statement drawing on his years of experience working with this congregation and partnering with the UUA and looking at our previous capital campaigns to really set the scope for what we hope to accomplish over this next year. Staff ran focus groups with over 100 members from the congregation to refine and adjust and expand on that original idea. The roof team, or the roof task force, has been meeting for I think at least the past 6 months to really understand, and we're going to hear about this more in a little bit, but to really understand the history and some of the needs that the Landmark roof and prow and structures have. And they've been working with engineers to get additional outside expert help. And our coordinator, Molly Kelly, has joined us and has really done a lot of the legwork to organize a really great timeline and set of action items that we can implement to have this campaign run smoothly, assuming that we all decide to move ahead together. There are just a couple things on the Landmark side that I want to call out. One of the areas to focus on would be restoring or repairing the prow, and also some cosmetic and structural work on the roof, including some of the copper tiles and some of the membranes under those, and then also perhaps some of the structure that's supporting it at all. So there's a lot of interesting technical complexity that goes into it, and we're not going to dive very far into that today, but there will be a forum for those who are interested in the inner workings of the roof situation. There's going to be a forum happening this summer, so stay tuned to the red floors or the announcements to get the specifics on when and where and who will be there. And we also just wanted to call out that since this is a Frank Lloyd Wright building and it's nationally known, that we expect there will be some outside support for investments that we're trying to make in this part of our capital campaign. And here's a little preview for those of you interested in the roof forum, some snapshots of what's not working as intended on the Landmark side. We can see a curve there and some other problems that I'll let the roof team get into more to explain exactly. There's an interesting combination of things going on.
What's the white substance? Insulation?
I think that's insulation. I don't think it's snow. And then similarly on the atrium side here, there are a few things that we want to target. So the first thing that we hope to do with this campaign is raise a pile of money that we can use as a lump sum payment to help partially retire the mortgage that we still have. And we think that by doing that, we're targeting being able to adjust our annual operating budget to reduce our annual payments and potentially free up some more spending power to invest in other things that are important to us. We're also looking at putting solar on this building, and that would be pretty much on a flat roof. It wouldn't have really any noticeable visibility from down below the building, but we think that's really consistent with how this building has been built in the first place, and also consistent with our vision and our values as a congregation. And then lastly, there are a couple of functional furnishings that we want to add to this atrium that were part of the original idea. They include finishing off some part of the stage right here, and I think getting a name tag holder that's more consistent and I think bigger than the one that we currently have. So a couple of odds and ends to finish this, to get it to where it could be. So I'm putting some numbers up here, and this is a rough breakdown of how we think the investment. We're going to aim to raise $3 million in total, and this is a rough breakdown of where we think that investment would go. And I want to call out that I call this good faith estimates because it really is that. we've done a lot of due diligence and we've done a lot of research into these numbers, so we're confident that based on the evidence that's available, these are very representative. But some of these numbers may change depending on the nature of the projects. And we're still in conversation with the engineers, for example, that are investigating the different roof needs and opportunities over on the historic side of the building. So, looks like a number dropped off there. Yeah, so I think we go the roof to 1.3, the mortgage to 1.3, and the prow to 125K, and then everything else works out. So if there are two numbers that are going to change up here, the ones that are most likely to move up or down a little bit would be the functional and historical work on the landmark roof and the mortgage payment. And so it's going to depend on really on need and what we learn from the engineers. And so it's possible if the roof costs go up a little bit, we may have a little bit less to invest in a one-time mortgage payoff. I can share some good news though. So if we're aiming to reach $3 million, we're really off to a fast start. We've had a variety of money come in from different sources that support these capital efforts. Including some insurance money that came in for hail damage on the roof. $250,000 has already come in, and as much as $100,000 more may come in, and we anticipate using that to help support this broad effort. We had a member write an excellent grant, and we're able to get $100,000 in support from the EVU Foundation to support the restoration of the prow. And we've already, even though we haven't yet had a motion on this capital campaign, had some really generous donations come in from the congregation to support this work. So we're going to still try to raise $3 million in addition to this. We're really confident and optimistic, and if we end up with more money than we sought out to earn, we might be able to invest more in a mortgage paydown or maybe invest in other exciting sustainability projects. Uh-oh. There are a couple next steps that we want to call out today. Here we are getting the overview and having a discussion and hopefully voting to move the capital campaign forward. Over the summer, what's going to happen, we're going to have the roof forum to talk about the ins and outs and some of the structural details that are going on with the repair on that side of the building. And so anyone who is interested or has questions, we encourage you to come and attend that forum. We'll also start the quiet campaign, so laying the groundwork for the overall capital campaign and reaching out and starting to have initial conversations. I'll be reaching out to folks to see if anybody's interested in volunteering and helping out. That's one place where we are looking for more help. Some of the tasks are bigger, some of the tasks are smaller, and they're in a lot of different ways. So feel free to email myself or Molly Kelly if you think you might be interested in helping out either this summer or this fall. Then, at the start of the fall, I think in September, October, we're planning to launch the campaign more publicly and bring it to the broader parish and also to the Madison community. And we expect to wrap it up on a pretty quick timeline, probably by the end of this year or very early next year. So as we end this overview and move on to the conversation, I just want to wrap up with this quote that we're all familiar with. I'm not going to read it for you, but give you a chance to look at it. And I think the way that I think about this campaign is it's a chance to make an investment in this very environment that's called out here in both of our buildings, and to make space for ourselves and to make space for one another and for our community to practice and bring together the community that we want to see in this world. And so I hope that you'll join me today and over the course of the next year and really work and help me put an exclamation point on this capital campaign effort. And before we move into a discussion, I think Michael was going to add one more thing.
Thank you, Matthew. Very informative presentation. I appreciate all the work you've been doing on this. So he began his slide presentation with a little historical review of the year 1988. And that was the year that I came here, and I actually arrived here in the midst of the capital campaign. The congregation the previous year had raised a certain amount of money for restoration of the landmark meeting house. trying to address 25 years of deferred maintenance. And there was still work that was being done when I arrived on tuck pointing the stone, repairing chimneys, and all the rest. The year that I came, with the second phase of that capital campaign was begun in order to fund the construction of what Jane Wood used to call the lesser meeting house, better known as the lower meeting house, a portion of which was deconstructed when we built this atrium addition. But we did erect the lower meeting house in the year 1990, and raised money for it the previous year. So I kind of began my ministry here with the capital campaign. Looks like I'm going to end with one. The thing is, this will be the fourth capital campaign I've been involved with, because after the lower meeting house, there was the repair of the landmark roof. There was not enough money that was raised in 1987 to repair the roof, and so even as we had done all that work, if you went into the hearth room at any time between 1989 and 1995, you would see buckets that were collecting the water that was coming through the roof and trickling into the hearth room. So we did raise enough money to repair that roof in 1994, and we also began at that time the Stone Haulers Fund. And so the small amount of money that was above and beyond what was required to repair the roof went into that initial Stone Hauler Fund, which is now, Connie, what, $750,000, $800,000, which is money that's dedicated to the maintenance of this building. Every year there are earnings that actually help us to maintain our facilities here. And so then the next capital campaign was in 2006, 2007, when we were raising the money to erect this lovely building and dedicating another $1 million to restoration of that building. That building is an expensive proposition over there. And so here we are 10 years later, and people oftentimes say 10 years is a long enough time between capital campaigns, and we're asking the congregation to try to raise upwards of $3 million to meet some of our needs. And it is an important time to do that. It's not only my last year, and I would have to admit it'd be a little bit of a feather in my cap if we could meet our goal. But just beyond that, you all know that we will be in a search process, not only for my successor, but for Dan Broner's successor. And a successful capital campaign goes a long way toward raising people's confidence that this is a thriving, healthy institution. So if we can address these needs, if we can raise this kind of money, then the prospect that we have for bringing aboard, a first-class new music director and another permanent senior minister are enhanced that much more. So I challenge you to try to help us to achieve this, both by your own gifts and by encouraging other people to be as generous as they can. Thank you.
So this is a big deal, and so I think what we're going to start off with is a little bit of discussion. If you have questions, Matthew, Monica, Michael, and I will try to answer them. And then after we've had a chance to talk for a few, hopefully we will be able to have a motion. So when you raise your hand to talk, Monica will run around with the microphone, and Monica, we have somebody right over here who would like to talk. We have somebody back there that you already saw. So you're number 2.
Forgive me if this was already addressed, but I stepped out to the restroom during this presentation, and it reminded me that I hope there's money in there for this women's bathroom. It really needs work.
So we are fortunate, in addition to this capital campaign, to have about $125,000 left in the capital fund from previous capital campaigns. So we can still continue to address other capital issues from that fund.
Okay, you've got one right over here.
Well, Mark Twain came and went under Haley's comment, so I don't know if a capital campaign is quite as glamorous, but it's impressive. My question is this. You mentioned insurance. What is the purpose of that insurance? Is that some type of a bond for construction completion or something?
So actually, I think if I'm understanding correctly, it just happens to be, if you could call it fortuitous timing, that there was a hailstorm and there was some damage that our church mutual insurers of our building assessed and said we're owed money as a result of that damage, and it happens to be a time where we're looking at making an investment in that building already.
And you can see the divots if you go out and stand in front of the front door. You'll look up when the sun's just right, and this looks like a golf ball.
I'm Elizabeth Barrett. My question is, well, I know when we did our last capital campaign and we built this fabulous building, we were able to pledge an amount of money and then pay it off in 5 years or 6. We actually took 7 because there was a job loss. But for this, would you say 3 years or something? Or what do you think?
Yeah, we're going to follow a similar pattern. I think initially we're going to set up a 3-year structure, but of course, if there are individual circumstances or questions, you can talk to Molly Kelly or Monica Nolan about that, but a similar pattern.
Thanks for this presentation. I'm a little uncomfortable voting for this without getting some feel for what that $1.3 million is going for the roof. I know you don't want, there's another forum. I don't know if I want to go to that one. I'd like to know just a little bit of an outline. And also, if we don't spend the $1.3 million or don't spend the money, will the building collapse? Will the world end? What happens?
Yeah, I'll start and then let Monica take over because she'll probably know more than me. The types of things that $1.3 million is going to go to spend are a combination of cosmetic or historic and preservation, and also structural. So the tiles that are going to cover the roof are going to be one place that the money is going to go. A membrane that goes under that roof, I think, needs to be repaired and a new one put down. And so that, along with the tiles, works to waterproof the building. So that's going to be another place where the money goes. And then some of the structural supports that hold up the tiles and the waterproof membrane also need some investments. So there was a meeting on Wednesday with the engineers that I didn't get to attend, but essentially based on the architectural design and the long eaves, the amount of weight that this roof can support is less than if it were to follow a more traditional construction. And there have been attempts over the years to reinforce that, and some of those have helped and some have inadvertently caused a little more damage over time. For example, a steel cable that's running along the length of most of the roof and not really functioning as intended. So I think it's going to be and Monica can add on if this is wrong, but a combination of tiles, waterproof membrane, and some structural support to keep it all up.
Yeah, you nailed it. So as Matthew previously mentioned, this is something we've been working on for over 6 months, and really fortunate to have a really smart and dedicated group of volunteers working with me on this. Dave Weber is one of those individuals, and it looks like he has something he'd like to say.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just couldn't keep. So, Dick, we met with the engineer on Wednesday, and the short answer to your second question is yes. The roof will fail. He won't say when, but it's currently depressed at 1.5 inches from its initial design. And the cable that Matthew mentioned was added in 1961. The roof started drooping almost immediately after the building was built. And, but the repairs that were done at the time added new stresses. And in terms of, those are ballparks, the 1.3 million. That was given us by the roofing engineers as rough estimates. Interestingly enough, it doesn't vary much according to materials because the labor costs are the big one in a roof like this.
I understand that the roof in the meeting house does need repair, so that's fine. But I'm curious, if we spend that amount of money on the meeting house, what condition is it going to be in after that occurs? Is it pretty much okay, or are there other pending issues with it?
I haven't heard anything else on the list. I think we'd expect it to be in really great condition after making this investment. Have you heard anything else, Monica or Michael?
I think that by repairing the roof and dealing with the structural problems, which are significant, there, that we're securing the envelope of the building again. There is always the ongoing threat of the failure of the heating system in the Landmark Auditorium. And it wasn't projected up here, but one of the things that we've toyed about is that we don't have any redundancy in that system at all. There's a place in the basement for 3 boilers to help to heat that building. There's only one functional boiler down there. So at some point, whether we use something else in the capital fund or whether we redirect some money here, we need to make sure that the heating system over there is fail-safe. That we're not going to end up on some winter day with suddenly there being a break in the line down there, or the boiler goes bad, and then we're basically in the deep freeze. That's the only other thing that I can think of that we've talked about repeatedly in the past that is an ongoing concern, just the heating system over there. But I think in terms of the roof repair, if it's done right, and quite frankly, our engineers said it hasn't always been done right, then I think that we can reassure ourselves that we're not going to have the elements from outside intruding on our interior space.
Testing.
I'm about to say something sacrilegious, even for this place. I'm a cheap, pragmatic Yankee, and my question is, how long will this congregation be putting all this money into a Frank Lloyd Wright building that has been building problems from the get-go? I know that's sacrilegious, but I just had to ask.
I think this is really rich conversation. I think it's something that we continue to ask ourselves on an ongoing basis. And I don't want to quell conversation, but I would suggest that it's a question we continue to carry into the roof forum. I don't know what the rest of the campaign feels. I know that if I hand this mic over to some of the other people in this room, we're all gonna have an opinion on the matter, right? It's something we've continued to ask ourselves. All of us, I think, can see both sides of that question. In terms of the capital campaign that we're recommending, I think we're doing our best to both take in mind how can we lower expenses so that we can free up funds for programming, and how can we also deal with the issues that we currently have, which are a roof that are ailing us.
I think I would add one more comment that's a little bit in disagreement. And one of the things that often brings people into our community is that building. I can tell you from personal experience, that's one of the reasons that I started here back in 1987. So I think there's more to it than just it being a Frank Lloyd Wright place. And this is Rob, not President Rob speaking, that we need to remember that there are many reasons why we have that building and appreciate it. So at any rate, we'll give a few more questions here or comments, or got one back there.
Is there anyone who could speak to what kind of warranty might be involved in the work? No, I mean, like in general terms, like is there a 5-year warranty, 10-year, 20? I mean, 1 year? What's the range?
Well, we have some confidence that Frank did not have anything to do with the actual repair, so. Roofs leak. Right, okay.
You were asking the longevity of the roof? I do not. I do know we're not at the point where we've selected contractors yet. Our first task was to really put in front of you all the argument why we believe we need a new roof. We're working with structural engineers and with a preservation architect, And then once you all say yes, the roof task force will proceed starting to think about what contractors or general contractors we might want to bring on. Does anyone have a sense, though, about historically what kind of warranties we've had on repairs? I see a Michael May.
I've only been working with that building for about 20 years. You normally don't get any warranty when somebody does a historic structure repair like this. They can give you an estimate of how long they think it will last. And the engineers we're talking with now would like to make repairs to make it last as long as it has to now, so about 50 or 60 years. We didn't get any estimates like that when we did it before. But the main thing we've heard now, and I don't want to get into a great big debate about the roof, is that the roof's worn out. The areola loggia was worn out 10 years ago, and we were told that. And we've been able to limp by covering it, but we can't continue to do that. We need to fix the roof.
You got one more over there.
If you didn't hear that, Ann just asked everyone to pass your dishes to the end. I'm Jay Roberts. I had a question on the other side of things, on the pay down of the debt. If you could just briefly, how much is the debt? Is this actually reworking the terms of the loan and taking a new loan, or just paying it off? And how much do we expect that to save, free up in cash flow for following years? $100,000 a year?
Yeah, good question. I have some numbers here that speak to that. I think we intended to have a backup slide to this point, but I'll read them off for you. So right now there's just over $4 million left that FUS owes on the mortgage, with an annual payment of about $294,000. That puts us at a payoff date of spring of 2039. So I think what we'd be looking to do would be to re-amortize the mortgage, which is a term it's not refinancing it, but it's basically a conversation with the credit union in this case to say, can we make a one-time lump sum payment and use that to adjust our annual payments accordingly with the same length of term and the same finance rate? And different financial institutions are willing to do that. So this is a number that we don't want to, again, list as a precise number. It's a good faith estimate again. But if, for example, we're able to raise about $1.3 or $1.5 million to go down to the roof pay down, it could free up as much as $100,000 a year from the annual operating budget, we think. So bringing it down from almost $300,000 to maybe around $200 or even slightly less than $200, which is pretty significant in the context of a $2 million annual operating budget. That changes very little.
I have a question about the approving a capital campaign. So would the motion, I guess what I'm saying is, would there be flexibility within the capital campaign budget? So what we would be moving would be to approve the idea of a capital campaign with the intention of spending a large chunk of it on the roof and a large chunk of it on reducing the mortgage, and that whatever else happens would be reprioritized as we go forward, or are we voting on those things too?
Yeah, that's a good summary of it. That's exactly what we're aiming to do, and that's why these are presented as good faith estimates. If we can execute and reality ends up matching these anticipations, then we have every intention of following through on them. What we're asking today is for support to pursue attempting to raise $3 million together with these priorities, roughly with this amount of spending for each of them. And we'll be looking to launch publicly in the fall, and that would be a great time to re-summarize and get together as a congregation and say, here's what else we've learned over the course of the summer, and here's the other support that has come in, and see how those have impacted the numbers, if at all.
Yeah, one question I have, I mean, as everyone knows, we're under a great unfunded mandate known as the National Register of Historic Places. What input will they expect to have regarding any type of change in the building physical plan?
I think the trajectory that we're outlining here would be one where we could self-direct ourselves and we wouldn't need additional oversight from them. What we're aiming for is to maintain the building in very close, or if not exact or improved preservation relative to where it's at now. So we wouldn't anticipate interacting with them.
Rob, are you ready to entertain the motion?
If you would like to make the motion, I would not object. If you'll state your name for Carol.
Carol, I'm Pat Carlson, member of the Finance Committee, struggling with all these issues the last 5 years, and I would like to make the motion that we approve a capital campaign aimed at raising $3 million.
Okay, anybody like to second that? And Jeanette Wheat? Okay, thank you. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. It is great to be part of this community, I gotta tell you. So now we're gonna have a little update between Kelly and Dorrit. I really want to thank these guys for working so hard under a real tight timeline. I think they've done a great job, so have at it.
I don't like sharing. I brought my own. Hi, everyone. Dorrit and I are here to talk to you about sanctuary. And our first slide is the motion itself, maybe. There you go. So that's the motion. Hopefully you have it there in front of you. We'll come back to it after we go through all our slides. Why sanctuary? So I am sure there were quite a number of people on our task force. They could each give you a reason why, as well as hopefully you had a chance today to stop by the offering table. Mario was there, and Mario is still here. Thank you for sticking around, Mario. So why? I think the election in November speaks for itself. You know what is happening with undocumented folks here in this country. But why do this as a Unitarian Universalist community? And that is up there, that it is an expression of our faith's principles, our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all people, and in the use of justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. It's also because we want to make a really clear statement here in our own community and around the country that we stand against fear and hate. So we know our slides are too long. We're going to try to sum them up for you. The next one is why now? Why do this now? And the biggest reason of all up there is because our local community is asking us to. Dorrit's going to tell you how we got to this moment, but I will just tell you I've been in several clergy meetings with over 20 congregations represented of all faiths, and there are currently 6 congregations in 3 locations that are able to offer physical sanctuary if needed. The 2 here, us and Congregation Sharei Shemayim, and then Orchard Ridge, which also shares their space with Madison Mennonite Community and Madison Christian Church Community, which is Advent Lutheran and Community of Hope UCC together. So 3 locations, 6 congregations. That's not a lot of spots in Madison. So we have been working hard on this because the community is asking us if this is something that we can do, and there are a lot of congregations in support of this work, and not a lot of congregations who can house physical sanctuary.
Is this good? Okay. So our process thus far, in January, I attended an informational meeting at First Baptist, just down the street. Was an invitation to all faith communities in the Madison area, and that's when I learned first about what the sanctuary movement is. Got started in the 1980s in response to the Reagan administration's efforts to deport Central American refugees. I came back to the board with it. Kelly and I decided to work on it together. We watched 2 webinars put on by the UU College of Social Justice and UU Rise. They were very informative about what sanctuary means and how to go about discerning whether this is something we want to do. March 19th, those of you who were here know that we had a special forum that hosted Mario Garcia and Rabbi Bonnie Margulies, who's the director of the Wisconsin Faith Voices for Justice. And they spoke to us about the need for this. At that same meeting, we voted to create a sanctuary task force, and I was asked to chair it. At this point, I'd like to have the members of the sanctuary task force who are here please stand up. So Ian Shea, Henry Hill Gorman, Claiborne Hill, Beth Butler, John Hollenbeck, David Looper.
Thank you.
Shortly after that, Kelly attended a meeting for clergy to further talk about this issue. One of the things that came through loud and clear on the webinars was that this is not a decision that you make by a vote of one majority. You need a lot of people in the congregation to buy into this. And we are a wonderful community, but we don't tend to show up at parish meetings very much. This is amazing. So we thought about and talked about how can we engage as many members as possible. And with the help of Henry, in particular, who galvanized some of his youth group to work on tabling and polling. I know you've seen us out there for the last several weekends. And we gathered 212 signatures, 211 were yes, should we do this? And out of that, 162 people also said that if we do it, I would volunteer to help. We had 2 question and answer sessions. And the last thing on this slide is what Kelly already talked about.
So who would ask us for sanctuary? So clearly, someone who's exhausted all the current options for remaining here in the US and has an immediate order of deportation. So right now we've been working with Bonnie and Mario to figure out what would this look like, how would this happen. So Centro Hispano and Voices de la Frontera would come to us with a request from someone in the community. We would then meet with them and their legal team. And why that is because for someone to go into sanctuary, we want someone who has a compelling story. And this is really a political act to sway the court of public opinion. So the folks who go into sanctuary are folks with a good work record. They've got family here. Most likely they have children here who are legal citizens. They've got connections with their community. They have no significant criminal record. And they are willing to be the face of immigration and the face of deportation. So it would be someone would come to us through community organizations, through the network Dane Sanctuary. It's hard work for someone to be here in Sanctuary, to live in this building 24/7, to not be able to go outside. So I think it says up there too, I may not have put it, but taking their health into consideration, because doctors would need to come in here to see them, which we would make happen. So it is no easy feat for someone to say, yes, I want to do this.
There's ongoing confusion, which I think is inevitable, about what do we mean when we say sanctuary. Sometimes we mean physical sanctuary, and that's the 3 buildings right now in Madison that are possible physical sanctuary places. Sometimes we mean a more broader definition. Part of the motion that we'll be voting on is that not only would we make a space available here, but if a space was used at another congregation, somebody was in sanctuary somewhere else, we would be partnering with them and we would be helping them. Just as if we took somebody in, they would be helping us. A lot of the concept of sanctuary is based on an idea of sensitive locations. That's a memo that was put out during the Obama administration, which directed that ICE, Immigration, Customs and Enforcement, would not go into schools, hospitals, houses of worship. So far, with one possible exception, they have honored that. Will they continue to honor that? We don't know. And if we vote to do this, one of the many things we will be working on is, what would we do if ICE came knocking at the door? And there are answers to that.
So what isn't sanctuary? Just to make this clear, because it's a question that we've received. So having someone here in sanctuary is not about harboring or hiding people. If someone came into sanctuary here, we will let ICE know that we have them. We're very clear and upfront with them. It's not a secure barrier, as Dorrit mentioned. There is nothing saying that they will not come into the building to arrest someone. It's not supervision. We will be looking for volunteers to be companions with the person so that there's always someone in the building with them, but we will also try to give them private space in a very public place. It doesn't have to be, nor will it be, our only work on behalf of the immigrant community, and it is not the only priority in social justice.
One thing that the task force has come to understand is that there just are no guarantees. So we've been working hard, and we will continue to work hard on understanding what the potential risks are and on minimizing them. One small example. Some of us met with a young man who's a lawyer in town, who's very involved in this work. He gave us 2 hours of his time, and one of the recommendations was put a sign in the hallway leading to the room that the person would be staying in that says private. Because a religious building is a semi-public place. I mean, people come in here without identifying themselves, which means ICE could as well. However, if we have it labeled that this section is private, then the history of legal decisions says they cannot go there without a warrant signed by a judge. Now, I don't want to get into all the details of that, but I just want to give you some sense that we have been looking into details about this, and that there's a lot involved here. So some people are very confident, people who've been doing this work, like the Denver church, that this is not civil disobedience because we will not be harboring. Other people say, well, yeah, it kind of is. So is there zero risk to us? No. Nobody's ever been arrested. Nobody's, yeah, I don't think they've been arrested, right? Now, there was an arrest of a number of UU folks somewhat recently because they physically blocked, or tried to, they didn't succeed, some ICE people from taking a person into custody, and the person was taken into custody and immediately deported. That's not part of what we are about. It's not part of what we're proposing. What individuals do is up to each individual. But there's also will be a protocol for that eventuality.
Are we doing this on our own? As we've mentioned, there are 6 congregations in 3 locations. Together with others, there is a group formed now called Dane Sanctuary. There's over 20 other congregations and 100 other individuals prepared to provide the support that would be needed for us to do this, and a steering committee for Dane Sanctuary is currently being formed. So we're up to questions, aren't we? Really? Kurt, sorry, you're too far away from me. Oh, look, he's not even going to make me.
Kurt Stege. When I have not done my research, and I'll admit to that, but I've been listening carefully, and when I was listening, I was thinking in the context of really this building or the landmark building as it continues on to this one. But our campus does include the ISOM house. That is taken into consideration, I assume. Is that right?
So we talked about that as well, and the consensus is that the closer the person is to the sanctuary, we call it an auditorium, the better. Where the worship happens. Yeah. The better. So actually we are, if this passes, and if we are asked to provide sanctuary, right now we are looking at courtyard room E.
I hope it's on the other side that I've got a question so I can run across the stage.
Trying to get your steps in?
I'm trying to get rid of that bagel I ate.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I've got 2 questions. One, what if we were to find out after granting somebody sanctuary that they were wanted for a crime, not an immigration-related crime, but a more common type of crime? What would our obligation, or what would we be willing to do if the authorities wanted such a person? My second question is this. If people were to become aware that this was a sanctuary, I guess my concern is that if we were to admit one person, word might get around and we might start getting multiple persons seeking refuge here, and how would we deal with a situation like that? Thanks.
So for your first question, and Mario, correct me if I'm wrong on this, a background check would be done on the person. They've got to have a legal team in place. So we would be very aware of any criminal activity in their past. For most of these folks, there may be, they can't have a driver's license, and so they may have a criminal record for driving without a license. That's why we say no significant criminal record, and the way that you said it is great. Crimes not related to immigration status. We would know all of that up front. For your other question, it's highly unlikely that someone would come to an unknown faith community, a place they may have never been, and say, I want sanctuary, because they don't know anything about us and they're not sure what we would do. Once we have someone in sanctuary, if we do start getting other requests, there is a rapid response network that is being formed separately, And part of the work that that group will do will be working with the folks who may not be good candidates for sanctuary, but still need help. And so there's this whole other organization that will be working on those issues.
This is really not about helping any significant number of people. It really isn't. It's as much a political statement, or perhaps even more of an action, as it is helping one individual or maybe one family.
I'm going to preface by apologizing in advance for possibly raising the level of paranoia, but it is a fact, going at least as far back as COINTELPRO, that open dissident organizations tend to be infiltrated by the federal government, sometimes by people who are trained as police officers, sometimes by simply by people who are have a reason to make themselves available to the feds as part of a plea agreement, while on probation or whatever. Have you considered that kind of risk, the risk of informers, people who might be wired, people who might be being prepped to do testimony before grand juries against us?
So the way we would conduct ourselves if we have someone in sanctuary would be very open and very transparent. So if somebody came in with a wire, they wouldn't find out anything more than what everybody already knows, which would, we have this person here. I don't know if that helps.
Hi, I'm Bob Alt. We just had consensus about budgetary issues. Is there a projection of the potential expenses involved in serving as a sanctuary, including legal fees and tax implications and things like that?
Yeah, Henry, do you want to talk to that for a minute?
Yeah, so right now, I'll stand. Right now, I've been talking a lot with the UU Church of Denver, which has been one of the leaders in the sanctuary movement, not just in the UUA, but all across the country in all sorts of different congregations. And as I've been talking to them, they've showed me kind of their year-to-year layout of what the cost might be. And most of the upfront cost is going to be setting up that room for them, getting beds and maybe chairs and refrigerators and whatever else they might need. That's what UU Church of Denver. In our own congregation, and as Kelly already said, we've already had many people come forward saying they have an extra bed, they have a refrigerator, they have a chair. So most of that cost furnishing the room, we expect to be close to zero. The other largest cost is food and amenities. And as Kelly and Dort talked about before, we're hoping to create this network of sanctuary all across Madison. And though we only have 6 other congregations and 2 other locations actually housing someone, those other 20 congregations and the 100+ other people who aren't in a congregation, which is approximately 800 people, would be supplying a lot of that food and supplying a lot of those amenities that we might need. So we expect that cost to also be close to zero as well. And so in the whole, sanctuaries, housing someone here, we expect the cost to be almost zero because we have Wi-Fi here. We can, get them if they want TV. We have TVs here. We have all of the big costs already taken care of, and the ongoing costs, we expect support from the community to cover that as well. So really, it's not going to cost a significant amount, pretty much. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
And I want to add, in terms of legal fees, potential legal fees, as demonstrated by this young man who came, Matt Gilhouse is his name, who came to talk to us for 2 hours, free. And according to what Michael has told the board, if there were a need for legal fees, there would be attorneys who would do this work pro bono for us. There are a lot of people passionate about this.
Are there tax implications, punitive tax implications
Well, I also agree no, but, right? Who's sitting in the White House?
Are you talking about losing our tax-exempt status?
Nobody has.
No. No one ever has in the 40-plus years of offering sanctuary.
Hi. Thank you very much for the work you've done on this and helping us understand what it means. My question is about whether the congregations who have already declared themselves sanctuary congregations have put out any kind of press release, if we would plan on doing the same. And then to piggyback on that as well, you know, we're an enormous congregation with a lot of connections outside of this community, obviously. What kind of communication support would be provided to us as congregants addressing questions that would come up from our friends and family outside the community?
Tim and I attended a meeting of the pre-steering committee. This stuff is all new. We are, frankly, these 6 congregations in 3 locations, we're the pioneers for this. So we attended a meeting with Rabbi Bonnie, and Covenant Presbyterian was there, First Congregational was there, Beth Israel was there, James Reeb was there. I do want to mention that actually, as far as I know, Congregation Shirei Shamayim and James Reeb are the only 2 congregations that have actually said yes to this officially, which is what we hope to do here. Okay, sorry, I got it. The aim, the hope of that Rabbi Bonnie expressed and that everybody at the group thought was doable would be that by the end of this month, maybe the beginning of July, we would be in a position, Dane Sanctuary would be in a position to call a press conference and announce.
Madison Christian Community is also voting right now, and Orchard Ridge votes on June 18th. Do you want to talk about communication with the congregation?
Do you know what the question, I'm not clear on what the question.
Like what kind of, would there be like, you know, how to answer questions?
Sure. We have a sanctuary page on the FUS website right now, which we can expand. Especially if someone does come into sanctuary, we'll make sure to keep that updated. There's also a form where people could, is there a form yet? Or there will be a form where people could type us questions. And they'll say, so here's what I'm wondering about, or how are we going to deal with this? And then we'll be able to answer that way.
Just to be really clear, are there any legal liabilities for the organization or the staff or the members?
What we've been able to determine is that if there's a legal liability, it would fall on the clergy and the officers of the board.
I'll have them take Michael first.
However,
It is important to note that, as far as I know, Church Mutual would defend us at their cost in the eventuality that we were charged with some kind of, an offense.
In all the years that congregations have been doing this, going back to the early 60s, no clergy, no board, no congregation has ever been charged with anything. We are not harboring a fugitive. We are not, if they come in to take the person, we'll videotape it on our phones. We're not going to stand in their way. So we will know all the do's and the don'ts, and everyone that's here, including staff, will get training. We will never do anything that puts our paid staff in harm's way or legal jeopardy. But we'll get lots of training, especially if we do have someone living here.
and having said all that, there is no 100% guarantee.
Yeah, I was just going to say you're talking about this administration, but I had 2 questions. One is, does a member of the congregation need to be present 24/7? And the other is, for example, we know a single mom who is illegal. Her children are legal.
Right.
Would the whole family come? Just the mom? And then other arrangements would have to be made for the children?
Yeah, right. So, but we wouldn't be making those arrangements. And most families that have legal children are already setting up guardianship plans to figure out if they are arrested tomorrow, what happens with their children. And so that Centro Hispano, Voces de la Frontera, they will be helping families figure that out. That's one of the reasons why our offering was for Voces, because they would like to hire an organizer for exactly this. Someone who could work with these families. Your first question, it doesn't have to be a member of the congregation here 24/7. We do need to have a trained companion in the building 24/7. Again, as Henry mentioned, we've got a pool of about 800 or more people, not including the 1,400 of us, who could work to make that happen. So we will be getting volunteers. Part of the reason to set up a steering committee is because we would be asking, if we have somebody here in Sanctuary, we would be asking Dane Sanctuary to coordinate volunteers. Because we'll be working with this person, family, and we don't also want to be figuring out who's bringing lunch on Tuesday, so another group will be figuring out those logistics.
This may be a minute question, but I'm just wondering if someone is living here, does that impact our physical liability insurance payments?
No. As the conversations we've had with Church Mutual up to this point, no. It would be covered under the same thing as when we have a youth lock-in overnight. If someone got hurt at that, same kind of thing. Just a really long
Hello. I'm wondering about capacity. So if you have, if there's a whole family, you would take the whole family. If there was an individual, would you take another unrelated individual? Would you have a few? So, or if it was an individual, just be one person then?
Chances are very good it would be one person. Under certain circumstances, we might also consider taking one minor child if there was a real need for that, but that would be it.
Thank you. I've been a member of the Sanctuary Task Force, and I'd like to reiterate something that I think might be getting kind of lost in our question and answers here, and that is that the person coming in from the community already has a community themselves. And Voices de la Frontera, Centro Hispano support them, so do their family members and other people in the community. So this isn't from a vacuum. It's us working at the behest of a community to assist the community in light of the larger community that all support us and assist us so that we can assist them.
My watch says it's 1 minute to 2 o'clock. I'd like to move approval of the motion that you put up originally at the start of this.
So I'm going to assume that that means no more discussion?
Well, there could be a little more discussion, but it'd be one little comment going on, because I know you all want to get out on this beautiful day. Great conversation. I want you to know that you could all be on the board, because everything we've talked about today, the board has been talking about with our task force, and so it feels good to realize that we have had the same kind of thoughts that you've had. So I would like to call a motion, and if you would be in favor, please say aye. Aye. Wow. Any noes? Passed.
Good job. So we do have a little benediction that may carry us to a minute after 2. But before that, we did vote earlier on 2 new members of our Board of Trustees, but we also need to acknowledge that Carol Rowan and Rob are exiting from our board after many years of faithful service. Let's give them a hand. The way is long, so let us resolve to keep company together. The way may be challenging. Let us resolve to maintain faith with one another. The way can be joyful. Let us find new ways to share that joy. The way is uncertain. Let us try to blaze new trails together. The way opens up before us. Let us go forth with confidence and with faith in this community's future. Thank you all for being here.